One of the more interesting aspects of mixed martial arts as a sport is that you don't have to necessarily have the best of nights to get the win. You just need to convince at least two very important people that you at minimum had a slightly better night than your opponent.
I'm the boss. I'm your boss.
In this way, champions can get the crap beat out of them or even coast for a whole fight and still get to walk away with the gold around their waist, usually controversially, regardless of how lackluster their performance was or how they were brought to the absolute brink by their opponent. And those are the types of title fights we're gonna explore today. What's up, fight fans? And fight fans we are, because not only do we have a big weekend of MMA fights, but it's also the one everyone has been waiting for. Yup, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. And being partnered with DraftKings, you know we have you covered, as all new customers who bet just $5 on anything will receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using promo code ONPOINT. And you can stay in on the action and use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including total number of rounds and method of victory. The more bets you combine, the more you can win. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use the promo code ONPOINT and bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ONPOINT only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point. A massive thank you to our channel Hall of Famers for making this type of content possible, and these are 10 champions that barely scraped by a challenger. Number 10, Takanori Gomi versus Marcus Aurelio. Pride FC champions had this habit of losing when they weren't defending their titles, and so they would get to retain it. How convenient, Mr. Sakakibara. I joke, I kid, although the promotion was pretty much owned by the mob, so take that as you will. Anyway, big-time Japanese star lightweight champion Takanori Gomi was not supposed to lose to Marcus Aurelio. This was considered a nothing throwaway fight, and the Fireball Kid would later admit that he was entirely unmotivated for it. Early in the first, Marcus would score a big takedown, and a few minutes later put the lightweight champion to sleep in an absolute stunner, so of course the two would run it back considering the belt was not on the line the first time around. Gomi would have the opposite problem of the first fight. He cared too much this time, and just did a whole lot of nothing so as to avoid getting beat. Near the end of the 10-minute period, the ref would pull a green card for a lack of action on both sides. The 5-minute second round would be a lot of the same, with neither fighter really getting too much effective offense in. It was really a toss-up on who you thought was the more effective fighter, given how little happened in this one. It could have easily gone to Aurelio without much in the way of arguments, but of course it did not. Gomi would skate by with a split decision and keep that Pride lightweight title, which he would never have to defend again. Number 9, Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko. A lot of the close fights on this list are going to be epic and all-time greats. The rematch between Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko for the bantamweight title is not one of those fights. The crowd was bored to "Let's go Oilers" chants. It was a fight where an immovable object met an unstoppable force, and as it turns out, that can sometimes lead to a lackluster fight. And the thing about lackluster fights is they're hard to score because there's not a ton of action to go on. Nobody could make heads or tails of this one. The media was split, the judges were all over the damn place round to round. It was this weird paradox where both fighters were making the case that they should win and simultaneously making the case that they should lose. It was like Schrodinger's title fight. All things equal though, Val was the more active fighter it seemed, and that is one of the reasons many felt that she should have been given the nod here. Nunes had some lights out performances in her epic title run at 135, but this non-showing nearly ended her legacy. Amanda would barely earn a split decision and go on to have 7 more career title defenses. Number 8, Vander Silva versus Ricardo Arona. Well, would you look at that, another Pride FC champion getting beat in a fight where the title was not on the line. Shocker! Vander Silva was, of course, not defending his middleweight title in the semifinal of the 2005 middleweight GP when he was beat pretty soundly by Ricardo Arona via unanimous decision. Not a soul saw that one coming either. At that point, Vandy's only loss in Pride was an open weight bout against Mark Hunt. He was the top dog in the whole promotion outside of Fedor. Despite the massive victory, Arona would lose the tournament to Shogun Hua, but because he beat the champ, he got a chance at the champ's gold, and man, watch this second fight and tell me you give it to Vandy. It was a lot more competitive than the first fight, I'll give you that, but you could easily argue argue that Arona did better work and deserved the nod from the judges. One of them would give it to him, but the other two sided with the champ, and so even though he beat Silva 1 1/3 times, he would see no gold and Vandy would end their rivalry largely unscathed. Number 7, Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. If you only saw Joanna Hematoma post-fight and didn't watch the bout at all, you would say, oh, there's no chance in hell whoever she fought lost. And while you would be right, it wasn't as if Zhang Weili was looking fresh at the club after the card either. And you would absolutely have an argument if you said that Jędrzejczyk was the winner. These two beat the absolute hell out of each other in one of the greatest and most evenly matched fights round for round in the history of the sport. It was non-stop action from both sides for 25 minutes and really hard to determine who was winning. But it might have been the extreme accumulating damage on Joanna's face that just couldn't be ignored each time the judges had to render a score. When this one was all said and done, 2 of 3 cards would have the champ retaining, but it wouldn't have been outrageous if you argued Miss Violence deserved the nod. The phrase barely scraping by often has a negative connotation, but there is nothing but positives about both fighters' performances in this one. Number 6, John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. I wasn't 100% positive, but I distinctly remember while watching that fight that I felt like there was a very high likelihood when the judges read the cards on John Jones versus Dominic Reyes, we were going to have a new champion. That somebody was going to finally beat JBJ for the very first time in his career. Now, you know the title of this list, so even if you never saw the fights, you also know I ended up being wrong. But here's the crazy part. It wasn't some epic moment. This wasn't a knockdown drag-out fight or one for the ages like his first bout with Gus. The greatest fighter in the history of the sport almost lost it all in a pretty uneventful bout. John just could not get anything going in the first part of the fight, and Reyes was on it right away. For me, the first 3 rounds went to the challenger. It felt like Jones needed a finish. To his credit, he made the adjustments in the championship rounds and clearly took 4 and 5, but those first 3 rounds, the judges were all over the damn place, and all 3 of them would give at least 1 more to JBJ, earning him a UD victory in a fight that was anything but unanimous for anybody that was watching. And this was coming off the Santos fight where he won via split decision and was also in serious danger of losing the title. Definitely the lowest point of his career, which says a lot considering these are successful title defenses. Lowest point in the cage. Number 5, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. The super fight gets thrown around way too much. I know that technically when 2 champions from different weight classes fight, it's a super fight, but no, this one actually deserved it. The pound for pound number 1 and the pound for pound number 2 fighting each other in their primes, champions of adjacent weight classes. Islam was 23 and 1, Alex was 25 and 1. The fight was A5 Wagyu steak prepared by Gordon Ramsay.
The fucking boss is fucking raw!
The battle would take place on Makhachev's turf at 155, and man oh man, this super fight super delivered. A masterpiece of high-level mixed martial arts. 4 of the 5 rounds are pretty well agreed on as split 50-50, with round 2 being the big debate afterwards. The thing is though, Volk finished very strong. He scored a knockdown in the 5th and was giving it to the champ as the fight closed. So it felt like Alex had won, and many still feel that way. When the dust settled though, the champ would retain to the chagrin of Australia, but the official rankings would leave Alex as number 1 after the bout, despite Islam's victory, if that tells you anything about how narrowly Makhachev escaped here. Number 4, Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit. When a fight is as good as Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit, and it might be impossible for a fight to be any better than that one, it's hard to judge as a fan because you're so damn jacked up on adrenaline and downed a couple official sponsor Monster Energies by night's end, you know, you're not thinking about octagon control and shit like that. But if you did on that night, and a lot of people chimed in on this at the time, it seemed fairly cut and dry that Carlos Condit did enough to be the new champion. The vast majority of media outlets saw it that way, and yeah, if you go back and watch, really no one round is that hard to judge, as epic as this fight was. It looked to be that NBK took 1, 3, and 4, with the champ getting the second when he scored a knockdown and the epic final 5 minutes. But none of that matters because the only scores that count are from Derek Cleary, Chris Lee, and Tony Weeks. And 2 of them saw the 3rd round for the champ, a round that he was outstruck by double and took some pretty solid shots. This baffling 3rd round score would be enough for the champion to just barely eke by via split decision at the end of the best fight ever. Number 3, George St. Pierre versus Johnny Hendricks. I know the eyeball test after a fight is a terrible way of deciding who was the winner, but man, did GSP wear every bit of that 25 minutes on his face. The dude went through it against Johnny Hendricks. And you know what? The decision is questionable. Incredibly questionable, in fact. The thing about this one, and obviously even at the time it was controversial, so it wasn't like in retrospect people thought Hendricks won. Everybody thought he won that night. But what's fascinating is 4 of the 5 rounds are super easy to score, and almost everyone agreed on. Hendricks Hendricks took rounds 2 and 4, GSP took rounds 3 and 5. But who had the first? That is where the debate lies, and watching it back for the 100th time, I do really feel like you gotta give that one to old Big Rig. He was doing some serious damage on the champ. At the end of the day, of course, the debate does not matter because the champ retained on the cards in a firestorm of controversy, a firestorm he dumped 5 gallons of gasoline on by semi-retiring after the fight. Ironically enough, Hendricks, who would win the vacant title after George left, would lose it in another fight that everybody thought he won against Robbie Lawler. Some rough scorecards for Johnny Boy during that time period. Number 2, Lyoto Machida versus Shogun Hua. In professional wrestling, sometimes the bad guy champion will retain the title by some unfair or unsatisfying means because it's good drama and gives the hero something to overcome. Well, the WWE couldn't have written Machida versus Hua 1 any better than it played out in that regard, because there's not a chance in hell that champion Lyoto should have been given the nod on the cards here. Most of the fights on this list, you could at least argue for the champ. In this one, nah. You could maybe say that Machida won a single round. You could argue if you're being very generous too, but beyond that, you are really pushing it. Everybody knew that this was not the right call as soon as it was announced a UD for the Dragon, including Lyoto. The UFC would even pay Shogun his win bonus because they knew this was nonsense. They would also set up an immediate rematch in which Hua would leave no room for doubt, but on that night in Los Angeles, Lyoto Machida got to scrape by on the pure luck of 3 judges missing on this one badly. Number 1, Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen. So the thing that makes this all-time classic number 1 is that without question, Anderson had lost this fight. There was no debate here. He had lost all 5 rounds. So even though this did not go to the final horn, it distinguishes itself from most of the other fights on this list. This was a blowout. It was not in any way competitive. Chael landed 320 strikes to Anderson's 64, and most of those were off his back. Sonnen had 20 minutes of control time in a 25-minute fight. This was total domination. After all that talk and all that build-up, Chael Sonnen was actually going to deliver on what he said.
You know, I've been calling this guy out for 4 years. Getting to beat up Anderson is just a bonus. I'm gonna take his belt, I'm gonna hurt him real bad in 2 days.
Even if it would have been taken away a few days later, but that's besides the point. At the time, the champion was in dire straits, and of course, with only a few minutes left to do something indeed Anderson did, by locking in a triangle armbar perfectly timed at the perfect time. Anderson Silva is a goddamn legend, and this moment is one of the most legendary of his career, the best possible way to scrape by. You know who never has to scrape by though? The editor of this video, Luke Taylor. Banger job on this one. Please follow him on all his socials, and go check out his awesome YouTube channel. A massive shout to our channel Hall of Famers. Again, you guys are the best, and we couldn't do this without you. If you would like to be one of those people, hit the join button. There is all kinds of really cool exclusive content. You might even get to have some input on some of our videos. Like and subscribe if you're barely scraping by yourself. Comment down below which of these champions you thought was the luckiest to retain. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.